The Magna Carta and the First Barons' War. The Magna Carta, which translates from Latin to Great Charter, was a promise from King John of England to his rebelling barons to rule justly and fairly. With a long and mythologized history, the Magna Carta has influenced not only modern British law, but also the very formation of the United States of America. Despite being written to support the rights of barons and the church alone, it is held up even today as a bastion of common law and citizen rights. There were many factors that led the barons under King John to revolt and require the Magna Carta to be written and sealed. It started with the succession crisis when Richard I, known as Lionheart, died. John's succession was contested by his nephew Arthur of Brittany, the son of John's older brother Geoffrey. John captured Arthur, as was customary at the time, and he was expected to let Arthur live in captivity. However, Arthur disappeared within just a few weeks, likely because John had him killed. This labeled John as a tyrant and kinslayer, especially because Arthur was a young man barely through puberty, only 15 years of age. Then, the barons in northern France, which was, at the time, a possession of English kings and had been since William I invaded England from Normandy, threw their lot in with the French king, Philip, who quickly invaded and conquered all of the formerly English land north of the Loire. John, obviously, wanted these ancestral lands back and exploited his feudal rights over English barons and raised taxes to fund a war. Additionally, he was in conflict with the church. He already was branded as a devil spawn from a dynasty of murderers, thanks to his father speaking out against and provoking the murder of the Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Becket, in 1170. As a result, when, in 1205, it was once again time to appoint a new archbishop, Pope Innocent III required John to accept Stephen Langton, an Englishman who had been preaching in France for the past 30 years, instead of the man John wanted. John's refusal to allow Langton into England led to Pope Innocent imposing an interdict, wherein the Mass and other sacraments were not observed, the dead were not buried in consecrated ground, king and court were excommunicated, and the Pope threatened to support Philip of France's planned invasion of England. In retaliation, John seized the property of all clergy who obeyed the interdict and refused to back down until 1213, at which point he gave the Pope titular lordship over England and Ireland and a token census of 1,000 marks a year in return for being treated as a favored son. John now had a vast war chest, raised both from excessive taxation and confiscated church property, which he used to attack France in an effort to regain those ancestral lands he had lost 6 years previously. However, despite having allied with several people, including his nephew Otto IV, Holy Roman Emperor, their forces were defeated decisively in 1214, and John once again had to slink back to England with his tail between his legs. All of these factors led to many of the English barons rebelling in early 1215 and forming a coalition with many of the bishops, including Langton, who had their own issues with John, to demand he confirm the promises made by previous kings. Specifically and especially the coronation charter signed by John's ancestor Henry I, albeit updated to account for how the needs of the land had changed in the 115 years that had passed. When the city of London threw its lot in with the barons and bishops, John was forced to negotiate, and a peace treaty, that is, the Magna Carta, was thrashed out at Runnymede and signed on June 15, 1215. The Magna Carta covered many aspects of noble rights and surprisingly radical governmental restrictions, especially in the original 1215 edition. It specified that the English Church would be free from royal interference and guaranteed protection of all the Church's rights and liberties. It specified inheritance and guardianship rules. Heirs who were of age were to pay a specific and graduated relief for their inheritance. Underage heirs, however, were not to pay any relief or fine. Additionally, it was specified that anyone who had guardianship of an underage heir was to manage their inheritance without causing damage and to hand it over in good working order when the heir came of age. Widows were now protected against being forced into remarriage or having to pay for their dower, and heirs were protected from unsuitable marriages. Financially, the Magna Carta protected debtors from having their lands and rents seized, so long as they had movable goods to sell, as well as restricting Jewish moneylenders and allowing merchants free passage. the Magna Carta also placed significant restrictions on the king's ability to raise taxes and impose aids, that is, extraordinary levies, on his subjects, with a few exceptions, although these taxes did still have to be reasonable. The king could levy extraordinary taxes for three purposes: to pay for his own ransom if captured, to pay for knighting his eldest son, and to pay for the marriage of his eldest daughter. Additionally, the city of London and other towns were to retain their ancient liberties and customs. Judicially, the Magna Carta held that there was to be no denial or delay of justice, and there were to be regular courts at fixed places with the fine fitting the crime. However, fines for earls and barons were to be determined by their peers. Legislatively, the measures and weights of the city and London were to be made standard throughout the land. Fish weirs, a type of trap dangerous to passing ships, were banned in rivers, and all forests, that is, areas of woodland restricted to exclusive use by the king, that had been created during King John's reign, were to be returned to regular ownership and subject to the usual laws. Governmentally, the Magna Carta established a formation of a council of barons, 25 in number, to check the king and ensure he adhered to the charter, with the right to rebel if he breached it. Finally, it guaranteed freedom of movement for freemen, pardoned King John for past grievances, and granted specific rights and restitutions to the Welsh and the Scots. This version of the Magna Carta was far too radical to be sustained, and within 12 weeks, Pope Innocent III declared the charter annulled. For the next year, war raged between John and his barons, who had invited Louis, eldest son of King Philip of France, to invade from France and lead them. This war came to an abrupt end when John died of dysentery in October 1216, leaving his 9-year-old son, Henry III, to become king. In an effort to forestall Louis from taking the throne, Henry was crowned in Gloucester, and his ministers reissued the Magna Carta, minus the most radical clauses, such as those calling for a Barons' Council, consent for taxation, and those restricting aliens and Jews. Having first been issued by Henry's chief minister and a papal representative in 1216, the Magna Carta was now enforced, and was reaffirmed in 1225 when Henry came of age and began to rule in his own right. American colonists in the 1760s often appealed to the Magna Carta as interpreted by Sir Edmund Coke in the early 1600s. Coke had so expanded the Magna Carta from its original purpose that it was widely believed to have guaranteed justice for all subjects without delay, speedy and open trials, and the right for the accused to know all charges placed against him. Additionally, the Magna Carta was thought to preserve the ancient constitution and common law of England. The colonists insisted that their charters from the king granted them the same rights as those subjects in England. In 1775, James Wilson claimed that the armed resistance currently contemplated by colonists was no different than that used by the barons in 1215 to secure the Magna Carta. Even after the revolution was finished, the Magna Carta had a great impact. 8 of the 13 colonies specifically incorporated Clause 29 of the Magna Carta into their constitutions, and many American lawyers appealed to the Magna Carta while arguing their cases before both state and federal courts. In Britain, the Magna Carta also left a giant legacy. There are even 3 clauses still extant in British law as they were written originally in the Magna Carta. Those are Clause 1. First, we have granted to God, and by this our present charter have confirmed, for us and our heirs forever, that the Church of England shall be free, and shall have all her whole rights and liberties inviolable. We have granted also, and given to all the freemen of our realm, for us and for our heirs forever, these liberties underwritten, and to have and to hold to them and their heirs, of us and our heirs forever. Clause 9. The city of London shall have all the old liberties and customs which it hath been used to have. Moreover, we will and grant that all other cities, boroughs, towns, and the barons of the 5 ports, and all other ports, shall have all their liberties and free customs. And Clause 29. No free man shall be taken or imprisoned, or be disseised of his freehold, or liberties, or free customs, or be outlawed or exiled, or any otherwise destroyed. Nor would we not pass upon him, nor condemn him, but by lawful judgment of his peers, or by the law of the land. We will sell to no man, we will not deny or defer to any man either justice or right. In conclusion, the Magna Carta is a great document, but has been interpreted over and over until it has been used to support the rights of the common men, that is, those who would have considered serfs at the time it was written, not just those of the nobility whom it was intended to protect.